Well, with me today from the El Toro Water District, one of their directors, Fred Ajarian.
Ken, good
welcome,
morning.
sir.
Good to see you again, as always.
Nice to have you on once again.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, as always.
And today we're going to talk about that all-encompassing body, the California Water Commission,
Yes.
and really focusing on the storage investment program. And this is something that I think over the years we've talked about, and in many cases we've talked about why isn't there more storage. You know, we get every 3, 4, 5 years these heavy rains, and the water, either a dam goes or something happens and it goes out to the ocean.
To the ocean, exactly.
Look at these millions of gallons, that trillions of gallons we could be doing something with, right?
And so really the point of today's program is, and that's a great segue, Ken, the point of today's program is to help our customers understand what the state is doing to hopefully capture some of that excess water that occurs with the rainfall when we do have bountiful years like 2017, which was an absolutely incredible year. And to capture that and set it aside in as many buckets as possible. So just a little bit about the commission here. The commission is one of these agencies that people don't hear too much about, but they are a very important part of California's $2.1 trillion economy. They, of course, approve the rules, review the rules and regulations for the Department of Water Resources. That's the state agency that oversees the state's water resources and the use of them, both surface and groundwater and conjunctive use. They provide a forum for the department's policies, how the department will manage and operate the different systems like Oroville, San Luis, some of the other facilities, the State Water Project, and then also key water issues that is affecting the state department's ability to manage the resources. The Water Commission is our voice in Washington, because these projects are very expensive. So they advocate for federal funding, and we're talking millions or billions of dollars in addition to the state funds or bonds that voters will approve, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. Each year, the State Commission reviews the condition of the State Water Project. That's the big lifeline that people will see, the aqueduct that they drive up. So they go up the 5 and the 99 north to Sacramento, 444 miles long. That was built by or overseen by Governor Pat Brown, Jerry Brown's father. So that's an important responsibility for the commission. They also name the facilities, and that's a much bigger deal than most people realize. And then finally, and the topic of today's discussion, they oversee the water storage investment program. They come up with specific processes, which we'll talk about in just a bit here. In fact, why don't we just maybe go to the next slide?
We'll go to the next slide and look at this. And you know, this is a water bond that came up in 2014, but we're probably now seeing the benefits of it because it takes years to put these in. I mean, it gets approved, but by the time things are utilized and built and designed, you know, you're looking several years down the road.
Exactly. Ken, it's Prop 1, which was approved in 2014 by 2/3 of California's voters, set aside over $7.5 billion in funds for not just water infrastructure projects, which we're going to focus on specifically, but habitat restoration, ecosystem, watershed protection. It is a program that sometimes I get questions from my friends saying, Fred, what's this bond really going to do? Is it just going to sit there and we're not going to use the funds? I said, oh no, it'll get used. It just has to go through a process. And I'll talk about this process in just a minute. So $2.7 billion of those $7.5 billion are dedicated exclusively for the operational improvement of the State Water Project, and specifically for drought preparedness, as we'll see here in just a minute. And the specific item that we're going to talk about is storage, the storage investment program to help ensure the state's water storage capacity. As you alluded to in the beginning, Ken, storage is one of those very important but often overlooked essentials in California. You know, the state has so many different climates. We have over nearly 40 million people. We have a $2.1 trillion economy that's north and south together. water is essential to our well-being and to our economy. And so we can never have too much storage.
Right.
And I think maybe in the next slide here, we'll be able to see some of the detail.
And on the map, we can see some of these.
Right. Now, this map that I have here, this is a proposed project. It's up in Northern California.
Okay, yes, I see.
It's the Sites Reservoir, so voters will be hearing more about this as it comes up, since it was one of the dozen or so projects that did get approved. And its purpose is to capture those high flows that we talked about earlier during large winter storms that pummel Sacramento. And the emphasis on this program is on investment. This is a long-term investment for a facility that's going to be around between 75 to 150 years.
Okay. Now, is this currently a lake?
No.
They'll turn into a reservoir?
They will turn it into a reservoir. It is an open valley right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So there's not even, and they probably have noticed a lot of watershed goes into it. Why not capture it?
It's been studied.
Yeah,
each of the various sites. Yeah, this is an open valley at the moment, but it has been studied and looked at in 12 Ways from Sunday.
Yeah.
And to see how water, if it were captured here in this configuration, then could be incorporated into the State Water Project, the aqueduct that runs from the Delta south. This is what they call an off-stream storage reservoir site that would be constructed to capture all those excess flows. So these projects go through a very comprehensive competitive review process, round after round of reviews, public hearings, a very time-consuming process that takes several years. The state obviously is a partner in this, and these projects, the key, any project that's selected has to improve the State Water Project system. So in the next slide here.
Okay, and this is the benefits here. And again, as you've talked about before, yes, we want to have a water supply.
Yes.
But along with that, look at some of the most important things, flood control. I mean, the ecosystem, that too. I mean, some people are like, well, give us the water, put the ecosystem second. But also the flood control, though, that is huge in this state, and we've seen it,
From a public health and safety standpoint, you're absolutely right, Ken.
Yeah.
Flood control, as you see that picture on the right,
we
hear often Sacramento getting pummeled or in siege, under siege from massive amounts of rain.
Yeah.
When it rains, it pours in this state, and then when it's dry, it's bone dry. And so the extremes really, typify the variation in climate in this state. Some of the other important points, needs or elements are emergency response, fire, also for earthquakes. If there's damage to one of the or both of the aqueducts, State Water Project and the Colorado River Aqueduct coming over from the Colorado River, then these reservoirs, assuming they're in good shape, can carry us over until repairs have been made. And typically they say 3 to 6 months, probably more. Recreation is another key, very popular, water skiing, fishing, boating at all the major lakes. We're talking like Oroville, San Luis, Paris Lake out in Riverside County. So those are the visible signs of the water storage reservoirs.
And that's, and obviously the ecosystem too. I was just, to some people it's like some of this regulations that have come down from the state.
Yes.
We look down here in Southern California as maybe limited some water, and we want to see looks like they're addressing that a little bit more though.
I think with this current California Water Fix project, it definitely is going to help get more of that balance in terms of protecting their environmental resources, but also providing that water that we need, especially for these kinds of projects. So there are several different types of storage projects. The word reservoir itself, it comes from the French reservoir, which I have to roll those R's. But it is, so reservoir storage, of course, everybody's familiar with that. A lake, typical lake here that you see on the right. Then there's groundwater storage. Those, underground, basically, large areas, expanses of basins that have the ability to store lots of water. You put it away kind of like a bank account for dry times. Conjunctive use, that's a combination of surface water and groundwater storage used in tandem. And then reservoir reoperation is basically, you should see this shot of Paris Reservoir here at the bottom.
Right.
It's a way of operating the reservoir, making the releases of the water stored in that reservoir in a systematic manner that's timed, that doesn't weaken or affect the dam. I mean, there's a lot of considerations when reservoir releases are made. So it's just a way of operating and managing the reservoir. It's just a fancy term for a reservoir storage release.
Yeah, and of course that certainly comes into play in areas that are prone to flooding, and being able to release that, like you said, and in a timely manner, in a way that is very controlled.
Exactly.
We saw what happened up in
Oroville last year. Exactly. The state was sitting on their hands, concerned that maybe that spillway wasn't going to be able to handle the release, but fortunately it came through, and now they're in the process of repairing it. The competitive process that I referred to, it's spelled out in the California Water Code. I think the key point here is that it's a competitive process. Each project has a number of metrics that are evaluated against cost, efficiency, timeliness, benefit to the environment, benefit to the public. And so the commission staff goes through this very, very comprehensive process and also gets public input as well. And in the next slide, I think we'll see the list of projects that were submitted.
There's a lot going on.
Oh,
wow.
We can see here up and down the state. This was the initial list of 12 projects, some from as far south as San Diego, as far north as Colusa County. That's the Sites Reservoir project. One in particular here, Irvine Ranch, project number 4, that's in the Central Valley. People are thinking, what's Irvine Ranch doing in the Central Valley? This is one of those underground groundwater storage projects where they're creating that bank account to set aside water in a groundwater basin that doesn't get used by the growers and for dry times, so they can tap that resource and then pump that water into the aqueduct and bring it south when it's needed. But each one of these projects, you have, again, surface storage, groundwater storage, conjunctive use, reservoir reoperation. It spans the range of different storage
I like the map. Really spells out everything. So the final slide is, again, going back to Proposition 1. And this one, you kind of show the timeline here, which again, just because something's passed the bonds, it can take years to come to fruition.
Exactly. The process, everything is a process in this state, especially in the water industry. So we started, the bond was approved in 2014, regulations were tweaked in 2016, then each of those 12 agencies we saw on that last slide, they applied, and we're not talking just a few sheets of paper like this, Ken, we're talking stacks of paper, maps, reports, hydrologic studies, engineering studies. I mean, it is a detailed process. So that occurred over the better part of last year. Last month, the commission approved only 8 of those 12 projects. And over the next few months, they're going to start awarding money to each of these projects. One of those 8 projects was that Sites Reservoir project. That got just a little over $1 billion of the $2.7 billion.
And so we can see here, just by this, the timeline, it can take 4 or 5 years just to go through the process, and then another 4, 5, 6 years of the construction of the building. So you can look at 10 years or more before it says, here it is. Fred, we're out of time.
We're good.
We're good.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and
all right.
Pray for water, as I always tell our customers.
Good to see you, sir.
Ken,
thank you very much for the information. And you can always go on the El Toro Water District site. It's right up there, etwd.com. Get more information all about that. We'll be right back. Thank you.